Hi, and welcome to this screencast to show you an overview of the process in action. Essentially, what you're looking at here is some mock data that we've just put together for this example. So this will be data that is transcribed from a paper transcript from the focus group. And if you open this file normally with real data, the file will be password protected on a secure server and so on for data confidentiality. But here, just for the example, you can see that I've input the text into one per cell, one line per cell in Excel, in Microsoft Excel. And I've coded it here 1A and 1B. And what that's representing is perhaps 1A is the moderator of the focus group and 1B is the co-moderator of the focus group. Just so I can see that this might be question 1, all the answers to question 1, and that you've captured it this way. So just for clarity, I normally take part 1 and I put it in bold, part 1A, so that I can clearly see which is the sort of from one moderator, and then the second one I might put that in italics, so I can just differentiate both of those pieces of information. And when I have that done, I copy that data into a second tab. So you can see the tabs along the bottom. I have them just coded here, labeled color coded data. So I'm going to copy this text and place it into this cell. So here's this data here in bold and in italics, as we've seen. So now we have to color code the data based on themes. So for example, I read the first theme and I might say feedback is critical for success. So I'm going to color that yellow, and over here I'm going to create a little legend and call this feedback. So I know that yellow is feedback. So as I go down through the points, I'll see is there any feedback ones. So technology can assist in feedback engagement. So I think this is an interesting one because yes, you may deem this as feedback, but you might also think that, oh, technology is mentioned here. So what I do in this case is I insert a new row and I duplicate this this finding, and I might refer to this technology, we'll say, as red, for example. So I'm going to call this one here technology. So now I have two themes. So self-assessing my work improves its quality before. So self-assessing, I'm going to treat that as self-assessment. So I'm going to color that blue and call that. And like that, I'll go down through each of these and I'll color code them accordingly. And if new themes appear, I'll use a new color. Okay, so now you can see that we've identified three kind of themes in this data based on feedback, technology, and self-assessment. And the data at the moment, because I've just running off the page slightly, because I've duplicated some of the cells due to additional themes or two themes being in one statement, that I didn't want to lose that data. I've also underlined here a comment that was recorded by one of the co-moderators that all participants nodded in agreement with this point, just to see the interactions and what you witness in the focus group as maybe a key source of agreement that mightn't be captured in text itself. So I have all this data. I'm now going to begin to start theming this and sort it by theme. So if I analyze here and call it, say, we'll just put a heading. It needs a heading for the sorting tool, and we add in the data review filter. So by adding the filter, we're able to get these options. Now normally people have selected things by ascending or descending, but we're able to do it by color. So if we do this by color, by cell color, you can do it by font as well, but we'd say cell color, we can put maybe the blue one, so it's sorted. You see all the self-assessments together. Then I can go to technology, sort by color, red, which will sit on top of the blue, and then I can say the yellow one. And now if I close this sorter, I now have all this data sorted by color. So I can just move this box up here so I see my themes. So now I know that each theme is and what it's relevant to, based, and it's all captured. So I think this is a really simple approach. Many institutions have free access to Microsoft, their Office package, so Microsoft Excel, and within seconds you can have all your data analyzed by area or by theme. So what I do next is I bring all this data, I bring all this data here, and I bring it to a new worksheet. And you might say, why am I bringing things forward and so on and moving to worksheets? Well, I always like the fact that I can go backwards, or I can go back to my raw data if I want to expand on any points that I'm trying to consolidate as I move forward. So now we have this themed data based on each one, our final themed data. So what we have to do initially is compare the moderator data at this stage. So I have the final team data. If I want to compare the moderator data, I might say, well, I'll bring it to another worksheet and compare the moderator data. So if we look at 1A and 1B, you'll suddenly find out that there's duplications. So feedback is critical for success. Positive feedback appreciation, critical for success. So we might decide to put here positive appreciation and actually remove this one here, because essentially it's a duplicate and we've captured that point. Technology should be considered for feedback. Technology can assist in feedback engagement. So really it's a duplicate. We could put in here should be considered, just so that we capture any point that's there. Feedback, like the Moodle approach, Moodle feedback accompanying the grade is helpful. Okay, so what we might do here is decide that, well, this one maybe is helpful. Delete this one here, and we can say helpful. Like getting my own feedback, personalized feedback has benefits compared, so we might say, well, this one is already, this point is covered. Feedback digital capture is beneficial, and benefits to audio back. I like my feedback to be captured digitally, so we can say, well, that's a duplicate of the data. And audio feedback was something I enjoyed, as I could listen back to it numerous times. Benefits to audio feedback, listen back options. We might decide, well, that one there is going. You'll see that one moderator captured the point that all participants nodded in agreement. We saw that earlier on in the data, and another participant might, or co-moderator or moderator, might capture data missed by the other person, such as in this case. I found excessive amounts of feedback can be overwhelming sometimes. I think that's really a good example of maybe having two people there if you're doing this approach, so that no data gets missed out on. Of course, you may have chosen to use audio recordings, but if not, I think this approach kind of covers it quite well. So now we have consolidated the feedback data down a little bit. So I'm going to do the same thing with the others, and I'll do that now. Okay, so now the data has been consolidated right down, and as you can see, it clearly fits on the sheet, and we've got rid of some duplications that were in it, and we've kept some of the key points and added some points that were in some cells and not others. And I think you've seen the benefit of having two moderators recording the information. So once we have this data now, we can take off, say, the bold. It doesn't really matter at this stage because we've consolidated different points. The arrival of or source of that information. So now we have our data based on theme. So the main thing at this stage then is to copy that data into a new sheet, and in here we're going to use this point here to kind of review the data. So at this stage, this is quite time consuming when you have a huge amount of data. You need to do several reviews of the data to consolidate it more and more and more down to a more workable level, but make sure that you don't lose any of the key points. And that can be a considerable amount of effort, but it does take time. It takes fresh eyes. You need to take a break from the data, come back, review it again, and keep consolidating it down to a workable amount of information. And that's something that you can see at the bottom. I have two tabs here. Review 1, Review 2. So when you review the data, you might be able to get things into one cell, or bring the points together where possible. So I'm going to do that now, and you'll see it happen. Okay, so now you see the data's been consolidated a bit more. At this stage, I kind of, would take a break from it and bring it after the break. Then it means I can come back with fresh eyes to the data and see in a new tab, can I review it any more and whittle it down even further. So I might decide that the technology elements are kind of being duplicated, and really, do I need to have both? So if I make sure that I have all the key points, technology can assist in feedback engagements, consider technology, audio feedback. I could listen back to it numerous times, the listen back facility. The digital capture, yeah, I have that as beneficial. I like the Moodle, and that they all nodded in agreement with this point. So this one really, while I can mention that in feedback, it might be something I decide to keep with the technology theme and feedback. So it depends on your study, but you could imagine here that you might say, well, I'm going to focus on feedback generally in this section, but I'll use the technology as a separate one. And you can really whittle the data down more and more and more until you have all the key points condensed. And it's at that stage where you have to try and identify now the key points that are here and kind of an overview of the data. So the overview of the data really can be all of this kind of key information that you've gathered. And then we need to extract the key points so that you can move forward with those. So for example, let's just say for feedback, if I take my feedback then to a new tab for my data overview, I might take this here and just take the other point, because I've already consolidated it right down. So if I take this over and just wrap the text so it fits. So I have an overview of the data. Now it's a case of me just identifying my key points to take from this. So I think we know that there is a positive appreciation for feedback. There's a recognition for its role, so it's critical for success. And you could have in here, see improvement areas, or areas for improvement, and then personalized feedback is more. And there's more benefits to personalized feedback. Caution needed to ensure not overwhelming student with excessive feedback. And so we'll just make sure we have all those. Feedback is critical for success. Positive appreciation for feedback. There's a recognition of its role, because you can see improvement areas. Personalized feedback has more benefits compared to maybe the general group feedback in this study and this mock data. And caution with too much feedback, because it can find it overwhelming. We also know that there is a technology. There's a role for with feedback, and that's something that we can then move into a new table like this. You could get a new table and set that new table up, and we'll just clear the data, and you can change this to technology, and we'll keep our coding system the same. And then you can go back and get your technology data and do the same thing over again, that you're beginning to capture your data and identify the key points. And we can do a third table for the self-assessment. So I hope that's shown you very briefly how you can go from having raw data recorded from a moderator and a co-moderator, how we can begin to color code the data. We're duplicating some cells along the way if some of the points fall into two themes, how we can have some key information on the interactions that we want to continue with. We might have points by one moderator, not the other, and so on. All that data is color coded, and we do that very simply using Excel's filtering option that we can sort by cell color. A very unique option here, something that can really help you with your data. When we have the data themed and we know everything's okay and gone over, we're able to take this information and bring it into the next tab, which will ensure that we have our themed data. And that's where we begin to compare the moderator data. So we compare the moderator data from the main moderator and the co-moderator, and we remove any duplicates. So we saw the data move down from being just off the page down to a much more workable format. We then need to start reviewing the data. So we consolidated the information with a first review, and we made it even a bit more condensed. We did a second review, we made it a bit more condensed. We keep doing these review steps, and for a huge amount of data that's recorded, this actually I only have 2 here, but you might do this step 3, 4, 5, 6, depending how many times you need. And what's great about doing this process is you can go back a tab and go back again to find more information and review where you've come from the whole time to make sure nothing gets lost along the way. And then finally you end up with these tables. So you'd have 3 tables along, we've 2 here, but you'd have a third one, a blue one for the self-assessment, and you would have the data overview along with maybe the key points that you want to take forward for your study or things that you're going to write up. And this can be the place where we have the information such as that you may want to make sure that we don't lose these ideas, that they're very much things you noticed or quotes that you gathered. You could keep the quotes in here for what people said or the things that you've in the interactions. Okay, so I hope you found that helpful and beneficial for your work.